Dear parents, before you send your child for holiday this season, watch this video. Mary sat on the cold floor of her bedroom, her hands trembling as she pressed the crumpled paper against her chest. Her heart felt too heavy for her body. Tears streamed down her face, but no sound came from her mouth. It was the kind of grief that had no words, the kind that swallowed you whole from the inside. Her 15-year-old daughter, Sarah, her only child, her pride, was pregnant. Pregnant. Mary could still hear the doctor's voice, flat and merciless, as he handed her the test results just an hour ago. Congratulations, Ma. Your daughter is 3 months pregnant. Congratulations. For what? For the shame that would crush her. For the dreams she had carefully built for Sarah, shattered in one careless holiday. She gripped her chest as if she could hold her heart together by force. But it was useless. It was already broken. Mary had trusted her own blood, her cousin Patricia, to take care of Sarah during the holidays. After all, Patricia was family. She had 2 teenage daughters herself. Mary thought Sarah would be safe, surrounded by sisters. She was wrong. But it was too late. The damage was done. Mary had always worked hard to give her daughter the life she never had. She was a single mother, living in a modest house in Owerri. Mary's life wasn't easy, but she had always believed that love, education, and hard work could overcome anything. Sarah was her world. From the moment she had been born, Mary had promised herself that nothing in life would ever stand in the way of giving Sarah a bright future. She was a good student, respectful, and well-behaved. Mary often dreamed that one day Sarah would go to university, get a good job, and live a life free of the struggles Mary had faced. But things weren't always so simple. Mary's family was small, and she had always tried to maintain close ties with her relatives, especially her cousin Patricia, who lived in Lagos. Patricia had 2 daughters, Zainab 17 and Aisha 16, and although they were a little older than Sarah, Mary thought they'd be good company for her. The girls were lively, respectful, and well-behaved in their own right. It was the perfect holiday plan, or so she thought. The decision to send Sarah away wasn't made lightly. Mary had been under stress, juggling work and home life. She needed a break, and Patricia had invited Sarah to spend a few weeks with them in Lagos. It seemed like the perfect opportunity for Sarah to experience something different, to see a big city, meet new people, and relax before another busy school year. The last thing Mary expected was that her daughter would return home carrying a secret so heavy it would shatter everything they had built together. The day Sarah left, Mary hugged her tightly, telling her, "Be good, stay safe, and remember to always make wise choices." Sarah, a little excited and a little nervous, hugged her back and promised she would have a good time. But no one knew what would happen next. The first week in Lagos felt like a dream to Sarah. She couldn't believe how different everything was from Owerri. The streets were bustling with life, the buildings towering above her, and the energy of the city seemed to pulse with every step she took. She had always heard about Lagos, but now she was living it, the bright lights, the busy markets, the rich scent of street food in the air. Patricia, her aunt, had made sure Sarah felt at home. Every morning, they would wake up early, have a simple breakfast of tea and bread, and then head out for modest outings around the city. Patricia's 2 daughters, Zainab and Aisha, seemed like perfect hosts. They were friendly, polite, and had a way of making Sarah feel like part of the family. Zainab, the older of the 2, was an outgoing and lively girl, while Aisha, quieter and more reserved, kept close to her mother's side at all times. Sarah found them both easy to get along with. It was clear that they were well-mannered and respectful, at least, that's what they showed Sarah. One of the first outings they went on was to the Lekki Conservation Centre, a popular spot for tourists and locals alike. The trees were tall and green, providing a cool shade from the hot Lagos sun. Sarah marveled at the beauty of it all, the peaceful walkways, the hanging bridges, the birds chirping in the trees. Patricia was careful to make sure Sarah enjoyed every moment, taking plenty of pictures to capture the fun. She would laugh and say, "You'll never see anything like this in Owerri. Lagos is full of surprises." Her motherly care seemed endless, making sure Sarah was always comfortable and entertained. They went on to visit the National Museum of Nigeria, where Sarah was amazed by the ancient artifacts and the history that filled every corner of the exhibit. Zainab and Aisha made sure to explain things to her, pretending to know every detail as if they were well versed in Nigerian history. They took a boat ride to Tarkwa Bay, a beach not far from Lagos. The water was calm, and the sand felt soft beneath Sarah's feet as she dipped her toes into the cool ocean. Patricia kept a watchful eye on everyone, making sure that the girls had fun without straying too far. "Don't let the sun get to you," she would remind them, ever the cautious mother. "We'll go home after lunch." Despite the outings and excitement, something about the girls felt off. Sarah couldn't place it, but their sweetness seemed a little too rehearsed, their smiles a little too perfect. Yet, she didn't want to overthink it after all. They were family, and everything seemed so wonderful. Even their mother, Patricia, seemed to be a picture of perfect motherhood. She was patient, caring, and gave the impression that she had everything under control. Sarah admired her for it, feeling thankful for how well she had been welcomed. Patricia's husband, Mr. Olamide, was the quiet type. He worked as a business consultant in Lagos and wasn't often home during the day. He had a calm demeanor, always saying just enough to seem polite but never too involved in the girls' affairs. When he was around, it was clear he loved his family, but he seemed distant, preoccupied with his work, which Sarah could understand. Sarah was starting to feel like she could get used to this new life. The family outings were a refreshing change from her everyday life in Owerri. She could see how much effort Patricia put into making sure Sarah was having a good time. But as the week went on, she started to feel more and more like something was hidden beneath the surface, though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. She had no idea that these seemingly perfect girls were hiding a dark secret, one that would change her life forever. After a week of outings and family bonding, Patricia decided to give Sarah some independence. She allowed her, along with Zainab and Aisha, to visit a nearby mall, a modest place not far from home. Patricia believed this would be a good opportunity for the girls to enjoy some time together without adult supervision. As they walked through the mall, Sarah noticed subtle changes in Zainab and Aisha's behavior. Their earlier politeness seemed to fade, replaced by a more carefree attitude. Zainab, the older of the two, led the group with a confident stride, while Aisha followed closely, her eyes scanning the surroundings. They stopped at a small cafe within the mall, and as they sat down, the conversation shifted. Zainab leaned in towards Sarah and said, "You know, it's good to have you here. But Lagos isn't like Owerri. People here know how to have fun." Aisha chimed in, her voice low, "Yeah, it's not all about studying and being perfect." Sarah was taken aback. She had always been taught to value education and discipline. The girl's words hinted at a different set of values, ones she wasn't familiar with. Later, as they browsed through a clothing store, Zainab picked out a dress and held it up to Sarah. "This would look great on you," she said, her tone suggesting more than just a compliment. Aisha added, "It'll help you fit in better." Sarah hesitated. She had always been modest in her clothing choices, but the pressure to conform was mounting. She wondered if this was what it took to be accepted in Lagos. That evening, when they returned home, Patricia noticed the change in Sarah's demeanor. She seemed quieter, more withdrawn. Patricia attributed it to the excitement of the day and didn't press her for details. However, the seeds of doubt had been planted. Sarah began to question her place in this new environment. Were Zainab and Aisha truly the role models she had thought them to be? Or was there more to their behavior than met the eye? The next few days passed in a blur for Sarah. The outings were fun, but her unease grew stronger with every interaction she had with Zainab and Aisha. What had started as kindness now seemed to be something more sinister. She didn't know how to explain it, but the way they looked at her and spoke to her made her feel like she was being watched, examined. One afternoon, after returning from another trip to a local market, Zainab and Aisha invited Sarah to join them at a small gathering with their classmates. "It's nothing big," Zainab said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just a few of our friends. It'll be fun. You'll like it." Sarah hesitated. The gathering was in the evening, and she had been taught that going out after noon wasn't always safe, especially for young girls. But Zainab's excitement and Aisha's quiet insistence wore her down. They assured her that their mother knew, and it was all in good fun. "Just a little party," Aisha said sweetly. "Come on, Sarah. Everyone will be there. You'll fit right in." Sarah, longing to belong and feeling the pressure of fitting in with her cousins, reluctantly agreed. That evening, Patricia was busy with some work and gave the girls permission to go have fun and urged them to return home before it gets too late. She trusted Zainab and Aisha, never imagining that they might be leading Sarah into a dangerous situation. The venue was a small, dimly lit house. As soon as they arrived, Sarah could feel the atmosphere was different. The music was loud, the air thick with the scent of alcohol, and the room was filled with teenagers laughing, talking, and dancing. The noise made Sarah's head spin. She didn't feel comfortable, but Zainab and Aisha urged her to let loose. "Relax, Sarah," Zainab said, her voice slurred from what Sarah could already tell was alcohol. "You're going to love this. Just have fun." Sarah had never been to a party like this before. In Owari, her mother had always kept a close watch on her, and she was used to quiet gatherings with family. But this place felt like a world away from everything she had known. Aisha led Sarah to a group of boys, all older than her, their eyes lingering on Sarah as if sizing her up. One of them, a tall, well-dressed young man named David, immediately caught Sarah's attention. He was charming, with a smooth voice that made her blush. He seemed to take an interest in Sarah right away. "You're the cousin from Owari, right?" David asked, flashing a grin. Sarah nodded, her heart racing in her chest. He was handsome, and for the first time since arriving in Lagos, she felt a spark of excitement. Zainab and Aisha exchanged a quick glance before Zainab winked at Sarah. "David's a great guy," she said. "He's cool and knows how to have fun. You should spend some time with him." Sarah wasn't sure what to think. She had never been in a situation like this before. Her mind raced, but the peer pressure from Zainab and Aisha made it hard to say no. David led Sarah to a quieter part of the house, away from the loud music and laughter. He spoke to her in soft tones, making her feel special, like she was the only one in the room. "You're beautiful," he said, his eyes glinting with something Sarah couldn't quite understand. "I'm glad you came. You look so different from everyone else here." Sarah felt flattered. She had never been praised like this, not by boys, not by anyone. Her cheeks flushed with warmth as David continued to shower her with compliments. As the night wore on, Sarah found herself growing more comfortable in David's presence. Zainab and Aisha kept checking on her, always smiling and offering encouragement. "Have fun, Sarah," Aisha whispered in her ear. "You deserve this." Eventually, Sarah found herself alone with David in a quiet corner of the house. The room was dim, with only a few candles casting shadows on the walls. David leaned in closer, his breath warm on her neck. "You're so different from the other girls," he said, his hands gently brushing her arm. "I think we could be great together." At this point, Sarah felt conflicted. Her mind told her that this was wrong, that she didn't know David well enough to be in this position. But the peer pressure from Zainab and Aisha, the alcohol in the air, and the flattering attention from David made it hard to think clearly. Before she knew it, David kissed her. It was slow and deliberate, and Sarah felt a rush of emotions flood her body: excitement, fear, and confusion all at once. In that moment, she didn't know what to do. Her body betrayed her, and she found herself kissing him back. Things went out of hand and Sarah didn't prepare herself for what happened next. Zainab and Aisha were nowhere to be seen, and Sarah realized too late that she had been left alone with David in an unfamiliar, dangerous situation. The night, which had started with excitement and fun, was spiraling into something she hadn't prepared for. She wished she could turn back time, but it was too late. As the evening came to a close, Sarah's mind was clouded with confusion. What had just happened? How had she let herself be led into this situation? The answer was simple: Zainab and Aisha had set her up. They had known exactly what they were doing when they invited her to the party, when they encouraged her to spend time with David. But Sarah didn't realize the full extent of their manipulation until the consequences of that night began to reveal themselves. The night was quickly turning into a blur for Sarah. After what had happened with Daniel, she couldn't think straight. Her head was full of confusing emotions. She knew it was wrong, but at the same time, there was a part of her that felt strangely excited. Zainab and Aisha returned to the house with Sarah. Patricia was already sitting in the living room, waiting. "Why are you girls coming home so late?" Patricia asked with concern, but she didn't sound angry. Zainab quickly explained, "We were just dancing and having fun, Mama. It's no big deal." Sarah said nothing. She just walked past Patricia and went straight to her room. Patricia noticed Sarah's strange behavior but didn't suspect anything was wrong. Weeks passed, and life returned to normal, but Sarah couldn't shake the heavy feeling in her chest. She felt both guilt and shame. She couldn't tell Patricia what happened that night out of shame. She couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. It wasn't until months later, when Sarah returned to Owerri, that her mother, Mary, noticed something different about her. Sarah wasn't eating well. She was always tired and moody. Mary took her to the doctor, and the test results left Mary speechless. "Madam, your daughter is pregnant." When the doctor spoke the words, Mary sat frozen in the small white room. "Your daughter is pregnant, Ma," the doctor said again, softer this time, thinking maybe Mary hadn't heard him properly. Sarah sat beside her, her head bowed so low, it almost touched her lap. Her small hands trembled. Her school uniform looked too big now, hanging loosely on her thin frame. Mary opened her mouth to speak but no sound came out. Her chest felt tight, like something heavy had dropped inside her and refused to move. Pregnant. Sarah. Her Sarah. Only 15 years old. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring everything around her. She grabbed Sarah's hand tightly, but Sarah refused to look up. Shame covered her like a thick blanket. They left the hospital in silence. The sun was hot, but Mary's body felt cold. She drove them home, her mind racing, asking herself 1,000 questions. How? When? Where did I go wrong? When they reached their small house in Owerri, Mary locked the door behind them. She pulled Sarah into the living room and sat her down. "Talk to me," Mary whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, my daughter. Tell me how this happened." Sarah wiped her face and finally spoke, her voice shaking. She told Mary everything. About the party, about Daniel, about Aisha and Zainab, and how they pushed her into going. She spoke about how scared she was that night, how confused she felt, and how she didn't know how to stop what happened. As Mary listened, her heart broke into tiny pieces. She wanted to scream. She wanted to go to Lagos and drag Patricia, Zainab, and Aisha by their hair. She wanted to turn back the hands of time and keep her daughter safe. But it was too late. The damage was already done. Mary pulled Sarah close, rocking her gently like she used to when Sarah was a baby. My child, she wept softly. You should have told me. You should have told me. Sarah cried even harder in her arms, the guilt too heavy to bear. Days passed, and the news of Sarah's pregnancy spread through their street like wildfire. Neighbors whispered behind closed doors. Some shook their heads in pity, others in judgment. Sarah stopped going outside. She couldn't face their eyes. She couldn't face their words. Mary stood by her daughter. She shielded her the best she could, even though the shame was like a wound in her own heart. When Patricia finally heard the news, she called Mary, crying and apologizing. I didn't know, Mary. I swear I didn't know, Patricia said through sobs. I thought my girls were good. I trusted them. Please forgive me. But Mary couldn't answer her. What was there to say? Her trust was shattered. Her child was hurt. No amount of apologies could erase what had happened. Months later, Sarah gave birth to a baby girl. She named her Hope because even in all the pain, Mary believed that somehow, someway, life would go on. Sarah went back to school, carrying her books in one hand and her baby on her back. She was no longer the carefree girl she once was. She had grown overnight into a young woman, one who knew too well the cost of misplaced trust. And Mary? She became a voice to other mothers, warning them. Sarah's story is a painful reminder that sometimes, the greatest harm happens in the place we thought was safe. Her mother, Mary, trusted her relative Patricia, a kind woman she believed would treat her daughter like her own. And Patricia did her best. But the danger didn't come from her. It came from what she didn't know, from the people she trusted around her, and from the secret lives her own daughters were living. Zainab and Aisha, Patricia's teenage daughters, looked innocent. Well-behaved. Respectful. Even Patricia had no idea what they were hiding. They slowly lured Sarah into a lifestyle she had never known, one that eventually led to her pregnancy at just 15. Mary believed she was giving her daughter a fun holiday. But what Sarah faced in Lagos changed her life forever. This story is not just fiction. It reflects what has happened and keeps happening to many families. And that's why, dear mothers, even if you trust your relatives, ask yourself, how well do they really know their children? How closely do they supervise them? What kind of friends do their kids keep? Are they present enough to notice if something goes wrong? Being a good person doesn't automatically make someone a good guardian. So think twice before you send your child on holiday. Trust is not enough, vigilance is love. Let Sarah's story be a warning. Don't wait until it's too late to ask the right questions. If this story touched your heart, please don't keep it to yourself. Like this video so it reaches more mothers who need to hear it. Comment below, have you ever sent your child on holiday? What was your experience? Share this with a fellow parent, you might be saving a child without even knowing it. And if you want more real-life stories with powerful lessons, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Let's protect our children, together. The end. Thank you for watching.